second day we made our pitch and then won the Istanbul competition. And then qualified for the MENA finals in Morocco. I went there, Tuba. It was just one person from each team. So it was a good time in Morocco, 1 week of an event. And we did like 1 minute, 3 minute pitches and some workshops. So it went well at the end of the summit. But still, we wanted to get like more freedom, independence, and like pick the topic that we want to work on, focus on more. That's how it started.
Welcome to Seedstars podcast. Seedstars is an organization that aims to have an impact in emerging markets by supporting the local entrepreneurs, investing in their ventures, but also sharing their story globally because we really believe they are the true heroes. We'll be listening to them and other thought leaders and disruptors that are really shaping the future of tomorrow. And we hope that together we can build a sustainable impact.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. I'm Alex Weber. I'll be your host for today's podcast. Just so you know who you're dealing with, I was employee number 1 at Seedstars. That was a while ago. I served as an entrepreneur in residence and then as the head of marketing for a few years. And I'm now running a growth and marketing agency called 60 Seconds. Today, I'm super excited because I'm going to be talking with the founders, both of them, Ozan and Tuba from Optiyol. In 3 words, what they do, and we're gonna talk about it a bit more, but they're gonna explain it a lot better than I can. Is AI for transportation. So we're gonna go into that. Guys, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for hosting us.
How are you today? Good.
Good. As everyone, we are. It's hard to predict the coming days.
Where are you now?
We're in Turkey.
Istanbul? In Turkey, okay.
We are now in Ankara. We live in Istanbul, but to spend time at home, we came to our parents' house in Ankara. It's better, easier here.
How's the situation now? Is it lockdown like most of the places, or?
Not yet. They just say us to stay at home, and schools are closed, and we have a son, so his school is closed, so my parents are taking care of him. But they say us to stay home. That is the situation.
Okay, so it's not a full lockdown where you have to like really be at home and not move.
Yeah, for us it's in 2 weeks. Yeah, for the last 2 weeks.
Okay, it's in between. Okay, cool. Well, hopefully stay safe and everything is going to be fine in the next few weeks or months. Let's see how it goes. Look, I want to, before we talk about Optiyol and what you guys are doing, I'd love to maybe go through your Seedstars journey. Because just so that everybody knows, Seedstars starts with 5,000 applications, so 5,000 startups in 83 countries. Then they basically select 46 startups that go into regional events, and then they're all invited to the summit, which will actually take place in a few days on April 3rd. So you guys, it all started in Istanbul. So you pitched at the Seedstars event in Istanbul. What happened from then?
From then, it was a 2-day event. The first day was like about how to pitch and working with mentors. The second day we made our pitch and then won the Istanbul competition. And then qualified for the MENA finals in Morocco. I went there, it was just one person from each team. So it was a good time in Morocco, 1 week of an event. And we did like 1 minute, 3 minute pitches and some workshops. So it went well at the end of the summit. The teams who qualified for the global finals were announced.
So when was the pitch in Istanbul? What was the date?
It was around in October or November. Yeah, the time passes quickly. So
it's been a few months, a long journey, and you guys are now. I just actually learned that, but you guys are now part of the finalists of Seedstars World. So congratulations, first of all. I think it's a pretty amazing feat when you think about it. 5,000 startups and then now only 5. So congratulations. We'll talk about that, I guess, a bit later. But how does it feel? Are you guys excited? Did you expected it? What's your first thought on that?
Yeah. So even in Istanbul, there were many good startups, so it feels really good to be selected among those very good startups. And then in MENA, Ozan participated that, but in Morocco there were also very good startups, so we qualified that. After that, we joined the growth program of Seedstars, and our mentor is Charlie, the CIO of Seedstars program. And that growth program passed really very successful for myself, because we learned many new things. We attended a lot of mentorship and these kind of accelerator programs and other things. But this one was real, and it was just measuring every week. So it really helped us. So being a finalist after that growth program feels really good, all those things, because otherwise we know we have to do something about those growth and other things, but we don't devote that time most of the time. But now we have to do that, because we have all those calls where we have to talk about what we have done so far in the week, and the week has been too busy, of course, with all those development things and customer things. So being a finalist here feels like, okay, we have done that, we have done what we have to do, our homeworks, and then it is paying off. So I feel very good about it, but excited about results, of course.
Yeah, I guess it's also pretty stressful, right? Because I mean, the pitches, it's always, I mean, even if you're used to it, it's always a stress to go and pitch and then wait for the results. And now that you're so close to, you know, it's 5,000, then 5, now you're so close to the end, it must feel very, you know, excited in a way, but also very stressful, right?
Yeah, but like generally, like in football teams, they say they don't want to target like winning the Champions League. They say we want to play the final. So generally, like the target is playing the final. So it's good that like we are playing the final, even reaching this. Like we are very happy to come to this.
It was a good journey for us.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations and all the best for the next few days. And super excited to see when the results are gonna come down. Okay, cool. So basically, maybe you can tell us, because I said before that Optiyol was, you know, a summary of, I said 3 words, you know, I said AI for transportation, but it's a lot more than that. Maybe could you just explain, and then we'll get in more details about the company, but what do you do exactly and how you do it?
So we are trying to make life like better for consumers, shippers, carriers, and drivers. So the supply chain, a lot of people are now talking about supply chain logistics after this virus, because everyone is staying at home. The supply chain logistics, there's a big pressure to reach certain items. Actually, we are touching that supply chain starting from the consumer. And the reason we got into this is logistics world is changing a lot. And the 2 major drivers are many people are moving into cities. So the city populations are increasing. Like about 70% of the population is expected to live in cities by 2050. Also, e-commerce is growing very rapidly, about 20% annually. So this changes the logistics to more like last mile direct deliveries. So as consumers, we don't drive to these big, large stores anymore. We order things to our homes, office, or just shop from like nearby small locations. So that increases the number of points for deliveries. And we want these deliveries to be on time. We don't want to wait too long at home, and we don't want to pay for it. We don't want to pay for shipping as well. So that's why the retailers, like the e-commerce sites and all retailers, they want to offer that free shipping. That means they need to make their operations more efficient, like reduce their costs so that they can offer that service. But they are not the logistics companies, they are just sellers. So then they pressure the carriers, the logistics companies. So logistics companies need to revise their operations. Previously, it was fine just to operate with some manual work, some simple heuristics, Excel sheets, or like simple methods through experience. But because of the scale of the problem and the difficulty in managing this time, the resources, but Optiyol comes into play at that point. So we help them to optimize their operations so that they just work with just enough number of trucks, just enough number of drivers, and then they're able to give them a good schedule so that they minimize the time
back and forth,
distance, and also make sure that each address is visited on time so that people don't wait their goods wrong or they don't miss any deliveries.
What's the difference between, you know, maybe how they used to, like you said, you know, e-commerce is expanding and it gets more complicated and there's a lot of different things happening. And my question is, I wanted to talk about that later, but because you're mentioning this, it's very interesting, is how do they used to do, the software that were maybe helping them manage and optimize their routes versus what you guys are doing now? What's the major, what's the big differences between these two?
Like the delivery companies, they mentioned that most of their business was like B2B deliveries in the past, not much B2C. And B2B, like the companies, they order less frequently in big quantities. So they order big quantities less frequently. That means you just visit, let's say, 100 locations a day and bring like large shipments so that it's just like 5-6 orders, you can fill up the truck. But now with B2C, it's like small orders from many different locations throughout the city. So to fill up the truck, a driver needs to visit 30-40 different addresses. And the demand is now dynamic. So each day you get a different set of thousands of locations. And that means you cannot repeat the same plan. So in the past, they just stick to static plans. So they optimize once, similar locations on Monday, they know where to go. On Tuesday, they know which companies they go. Operate like less frequently every quarter and then just follow the routes. Now they need a dynamic system to optimize this.
Okay, so the system that they're still using for some of them, I'm sure, it just cannot work for the let's say the life that we have now with the delivery at home and all these kind of things and all the different things that is happening. It just cannot work, so they need to find a new way. Correct?
Yeah. Like the adoption rate is kind of not, we cannot necessarily say like everyone is doing this manual, like new generation of solutions are coming up, but the adoption rates are about like 20% according to research, but it's expected to boom because it's very hard to sustain the previous way of doing business for them. And what we observe with these companies is they created their own hybrid systems. So there are software from the past that they were using. They still run them, look at the results, and then do manual changes around it. So it requires like still a human planner to move things around. But with this many locations and without considering all the traffic rules, there are many parameters to be factored in, and it's hard to do with just the human work. So that's why they still miss orders. They operate with 30 trucks, even though it's possible to do it with just 25. So they're buffering it with more resources so that they can satisfy customers.
Okay, I see. Interesting. Okay, thank you. I think it gets a clearer picture of what you guys are doing. I'd love to take a few steps back and understand how you arrived there. I know that, Ozan, let me know if I'm saying anything wrong, because don't believe everything you read online, but you were teaching at university risk management before starting Optiyol, is that correct?
Actually, after starting Optiyol, even like when I was working at a startup before Optiyol, we come from like an academic background, like we did our PhDs, like we doctoral degrees. So, but we didn't continue in academia. I started working at a software company as an algorithm designer. But when we returned back to Turkey from US, some of our friends were in the academia, and they said like your practical experience would be really helpful for students if you can spare like a half a day a week and then just come teach a course here. So I did the teaching part-time, just one course in one semester.
Then maybe we can even go a little bit further. Is at what point did you see the issue that the transportation system had, and at what point did you say, okay, now I can see there is an issue, there is something we can do to solve that issue, and then started working on even just the idea at the beginning, but how did it appear?
So both of us, Tuba and I, like we are industrial engineers, like we worked in like supply chain optimization, but supply chain covers like many different aspects, like it's inventory, even like how much inventory you will keep, demand forecasting. And I think even like my first job after PhD was building an optimization system to optimize inventory. So how much inventory a company should have in each location.
Okay, I see. Yeah.
So when we returned back to Turkey, so we had that passion, like even when we were students at Georgia Tech, when we met Tuba, we were talking about in the future, maybe we may have our own company to build these optimization systems, because we like the real life applications of our profession. We really didn't want to stay in academia. That's another word for us. We wanted to see the results more quickly. So that's valuable, but you see the results a few years later. So that was our passion. So when we returned back to Turkey, we talked with our friends from college who stayed in Turkey because they knew the industry here. We reached out to people in supply chain through LinkedIn, got some interviews, got some meetings, and then tried to understand their work. And then we discovered that like most of the things that can be optimized or run with a software assistants are still getting done manually or with simple words. That's how we wanted to get in to this area of transportation optimization.
Okay, and then at like, so you know the US pretty well, I guess. What you had to, did you have to go back to Turkey, or did you wanted to set up the company there? What was the reason for not setting it up in the US, and how did you feel about that?
So Ozan was working in a startup in States for 2 years. It was again inventory optimization startup. One of Carnegie Mellon professors founded that. So it was very good. And I was working on my PhD, still trying to finish up that. So we realized that if I got a job there after my PhD, it will be very difficult for us to relocate to Turkey. And we want to live in Turkey because of family reasons and other things. So US was too far away. So we wanted to move at that time. So before I graduate, we moved here so that I didn't get a job there. we didn't want to look for a job there. And after our return back to Turkey, we worked at several startups, both Ozan and me. He did some consulting and then worked at a startup. And I also worked at a startup. And after that, we founded Optiyol.
Okay, so you worked in startups both in the US and in Turkey.
Yes.
If you could,
Also
I know
worked in the US and Turkey. Yeah.
Okay, so what was the for you, if you had to summarize it, what was the big difference between startups in the US and startup in Turkey?
In United States, I was lucky that like I wanted to do some like real world optimization. Like at a startup, there were like many choices in US that I could do this work. So I joined as an algorithm designer and work. So returning back to Turkey, we didn't have this opportunity. So it was like a must for us. If we want to do this, what we love, we need to start our own company to do it.
Okay.
But even before that, like we wanted to give a try to a few companies. There were just 2-3 companies that from our profession. We actually tried that. Tuba worked in one of them for 1.5 years almost. I worked at one for 7 months. But still, we wanted to get like more freedom, independence, and like pick the topic that we want to work on, focus on more. That's how it started.
If I take the timeline, you come back to Turkey after spending some time in the US. You start to see the issue of transportation. You try to understand how you can optimize it and make it better. How does your first MVP, if we can call it that way, how does it look? How does your first product look? And what was the major issue for them building that first prototype in a way?
For us, like the story is a longer story for us, like coming to being a software company. So we had like actually 2 different Optiyols. The first Optiyol is like the first 3 years. It's mostly like doing one-off projects with clients, like a customized optimization models for them. And then the last 2 years, now we are like a SaaS, really a SaaS company. In the first 3 years, we were approaching companies, or we got some like inbound things after a few projects. They were describing their transportation challenge, and then we were building a specific solution for them. And it was not necessarily like this day-to-day optimization. So for a few of them, the challenge was where to locate their warehouses. So where should I first ship the products to, and then which customers should be fulfilled from which distribution center. For example, an ice cream brand, they had like 90 different warehouses throughout Turkey. They were serving 200,000 different shops where ice cream is sold. So they said, if we were to reorganize the whole distribution, what should it look like? Should we still need 90 warehouses, or is it fine with 60? Where should they be located? And so on. And like similarly, we worked with like a beer company. They had the same problem, different manufacturing plants, different distributors. So how should we organize the flow of materials between them? But in the meantime, while doing these projects, we started developing the algorithms for this day-to-day route optimization. So that was a time to get to know the industry, actually, like get even the Optiyol brand known, like among these logistics professionals, and then get some real feedback during developing the algorithms.
So we have the privilege of developing our software with real customer data sets, because at that time, while doing their network design, we were also discussing how is the last mile distribution, getting some data from them, trying to work on that. The first MVP was working for that ice cream brand that we did the network design through Turkey. They want us to try that in one of their depots in Istanbul distribution centers. So we tried to do that, but it was just one distribution center, and we were just updating algorithm every day in the first 2 months. Yes. So we were going to the distribution center after 5 so that the drivers were coming back. We were talking with them, taking their feedback, and then trying to put that in the algorithm. So it was our first MVP in terms of algorithm.
Okay, interesting. I see. So there was a lot of manual work as well that had to be done.
Yes, yeah.
At the beginning, let's say, not now.
That ice cream company, that was your, let's say, your official first sell, correct?
Yeah, the first customer, to build,
Okay.
Well, first invoice was to them,
Okay, and then of course, when I look at Optiyol, of course, you see that the company that you guys are working with now, which is pretty impressive. You got Unilever, you got Philip Morris, Ferrero. It's huge companies. So, well, first, congratulations, because I think it's pretty amazing. But I think a lot of people, and me included, I'd love to know, how do you get these kind of companies? You start with this ice cream company. Are you just at the beginning, and then now a few years later, you're already working with the big guys? So what's the story behind it, and how did you approach them? I think that's something that I'm very interested in.
Like Unilever, it was referred to us from one of our professors from college. So like when we returned back to Turkey, like we had a chat with him. I said like we are with Tuba, we are starting this company. Optiyol will work on this optimization problems. And then Unilever wrote to him because like he's a professor of like transportation optimization, and then he introduced us to them. So that's how we got connected with them. With Ferrero, I actually reached out to their supply chain director through LinkedIn. But 4 months later,
okay,
I got a phone call.
So it takes time. Huh? That's true. I guess it takes a lot of time.
That was funny. Like with Ferrero, like 4 months later, I was in the parking the car. Someone called. You send a message to told the name of the person. I couldn't recall. It's been 4 months. I said, I'm parking my car. You cannot hear me very well. I will call you back. And then I searched the name from normal emails, like messages. Oh, okay, they are calling from here about this message. And then called them. It was a very quick sell, actually. Like in 2 weeks, we sold our solution to them. They sent us some sample data. We quickly showed like the benefits. And even it was a value-based sell. So we proved them that we can save like 1 million. And then ask for like 25% of that as the cost of the service, and then immediately start working.
Okay, and our customers, Horoz Logistics is one of the top logistics company in terms of home delivery in Turkey. So they come through our website. And the other one, Gözbaşı, it is the same story again. So we emailed them, we even visited them. We had a half an hour meeting, but at that time they were trying to use another company for the logistics optimization. So they said, we are already started with one company, so we don't want to try another. Okay. So we said, okay. And then we go back home. And after 4 months, they call us, okay, that company didn't work, so we want to try you. But this time we want to be more conservative, so we will try first. Okay, we said yes. And then they're happily using, it has been almost a year. So.
Yeah, it's one of the best reference customers. They are now making introductions to other companies. It's our best reference.
Basically, you don't have a sales team. You're doing on just yourself, your network, or like you said, LinkedIn or email, whatever it is, but you're doing it on your own, basically, which is pretty impressive. Because when, like I said, when you look at your customer and you go like, oh no, we got in touch, that means the product has to be in a way pretty amazing.
Yeah, for us the challenge was like we are industrial engineers, so we had like coding skills, but we can code algorithms, but we cannot code the whole system. So Ferrero, the way we worked was that we just told them we cannot build the whole software, but we just had the algorithm in our laptop. So every day, just email us the Excel file, and we promise in 15 minutes we will send back you the results with email. So that's how we work with the until the
So
product
our
is ready.
MVP looks too bad in that sense. Just email.
And just out of curiosity, do you work with, when you work with these groups, do you work with them on let's say local level or national or international level? How does it usually how does the deal get done usually?
It was at local level for all these companies. It was at local level, but now we are talking to like a group, again like an international group, and they are mentioning that they know that there are several countries that they are looking for a solution, and if we can get it done here, like if it works well here, they will make introductions to other offices in other countries. They have that like global operations, but the others, they were like independent, so each country had their own incentive to pick the supplier.
What would be, because I had a chat with another Seedstars startup a few days ago. He's mainly selling to institution and government and these kind of things. And I had the same question, because for me, I think that's very interesting. Is like, how do you get in touch with these, you know, these corporations, these big things? Because it takes, like you said, 4 months, 6 months, a lot of time. What would be your advice to someone that is, you know, just starting, it doesn't have any client, and he needs to sign these kind of clients? What would be your you know, your tip that you would give them?
Initially, LinkedIn worked very well, and personal connections, like friends from college, like who are in the corporate world, if they know some people, to get these first meetings. Because now, if you are working on like an interesting problem, if you have a solution, like that first meeting starts things like the hardest thing is that first meeting. Once you get that, it's easier to move things forward.
And I would say try to reach as many people as possible, because sometimes it takes some time to find the right people who is really looking for your solution. If it is not a problem for those people at that time, maybe they will not spend some time on your solution. So you have to find those people.
And maybe following up, which we learned over time. So like they by chance they called us 4 months later, they recalled it, but maybe we should have like followed up earlier.
Do the follow-up. Yeah, it's something like you need at least 4 emails to close a deal or something. There is some sort of a statistic thing that says it's 4 or 5 emails. I don't remember. So yeah, do the follow-up. We talked a lot about, you know, how you guys are doing, helping these companies. What, I'm not an expert in the field, so excuse me if it's not exactly right what I'm saying, but from what I understood and from what I've seen working with a few different startups, is that what we call I think it's called the last mile logistic, or last mile is one of the biggest issue that these companies have. Is that the case? Is that true, first of all? Because maybe it's not, but is that the case? And if yes, how do you guys help them solve that issue?
The last mile problem is, as you mentioned, like with e-commerce and like with many different points with different challenges in city, is a big problem. But at the same time, like the first mile is also getting a harder problem. That's another observation right now. Because even first mile, when they move products between like factories to regional distribution centers, because the products life cycles are now shorter, you cannot keep too much inventory. So even for first mile, they start to get smaller size orders. So even those large trucks, they need to make multiple stops. Previously, they were just going from A to B. There's nothing to optimize for them. But now even for them, the problem gets complicated. So we started serving companies with first mile as well. But the last mile is more challenging, because in a city, you cannot use every truck, because there are certain size restrictions. It's not just optimizing the route, but it's also selecting the right set of vehicles. So I need 3 big trucks, for example, 2 medium trucks, and then 5 small today. Maybe tomorrow I will need a different set, or how many drivers they need to hire, because the demand is in last mile different every day. You cannot hire like 30 trucks, 30 drivers, and then try to operate with that, because one day you may need 50, one day just 10. So that's a big challenge, like this resource management.
And time constraints are also more challenging in terms of last milers, because consumers have tight time windows that they want to receive their order. But in the long haul, we don't have that in the first mile part, but last mile makes that more complicated.
Okay, that's interesting. And maybe just again, because I want to understand a little bit more about the specifics. Let's say you start working with one of these big clients. how does the first steps, because I can sort of imagine how it looks when it's done and everything is working fine and then it's optimized. But how does it look at the beginning? You got in and then you start working with them. What's the first things you need to do? You need to understand. Even if we get in details, I'd really like to understand, how the thing is set up at the beginning.
They first, it starts with a feeling from the customer side. They feel that things can get improved. So that's very important. If they identify it themselves, otherwise it's harder to convince. So if they had that, it makes it easier. So we visit them. We first listen their problem, like what's their planning challenge, the scale, for example, how many addresses they visit every day, how many drivers they are working with, is there a seasonality, or what's the biggest challenge for them. And then we start introducing what we have, like what Optiyol does, give them, we find the closest example to them from our current clients. Okay, your operation looks like this client's operation. For them, we are doing this. And then at the end, it comes down to they want to see a proof that Optiyol can really help them. So how much savings they can get using Optiyol. So for that, we have a data template so that we can quickly collect data from them and then run a simulation of their current routes versus optimization, and then generate a report. With that report, they see that, okay, last week, I operated with 30 trucks, but Optiyol tells me that it can be done with 28, saves me 2 vehicles. We made 2,500 kilometers. Optiyol can do it in 2,000. So 20% saving in mileage, for example, 10% saving in fleet size. Also, we compare if there's time sensitivity. We count number of orders that they delivered on time with their plan, and how many orders we can deliver on time with the given resources. So generally 3 dimensions: how much saving in fleet size, how much saving in fuel cost, and then how much improvements in on-time deliveries. Then we do a generalization from that. If with 1 week of data, we can show this much savings. So what does it translate to overall annually? For example, what does it correspond to? And then it starts the discussions about pricing, how to integrate. And if they want to see other alternatives, then they say let's pause, we'll look at other alternatives and then come back. Otherwise, it goes, the sales process starts.
What's the timeline usually on this? When you first, let's say you first have that discussion with the client, and then once it's up and running and you start getting the data in and so on, what's the timeline usually?
Generally, when we send the template, on average, it's 1 to 2 weeks, depending on customers IT infrastructure, to get the data. And for us, it's 1 week of study to generate the report. And then in about 3 weeks, we do the second meeting with results.
Okay, that's pretty fast.
After that, it's fast. If they have a good data infrastructure with the addresses, not all companies have a good record of addresses, or not all of them record down what they did, so how they delivered. Because the driver was dispatched with loads, we just follow the route. But if they don't know the real schedule, so it may take an additional week. So we say, okay, this week, let your drivers record down, write down what was their first stop, what was their second stop, at what time he arrived at each location, so that they collect up-to-date data.
Those vehicle and time constraints sometimes are not written down in the system, so it may take some time to write them down for those.
So how much time they will spend, for example, if they deliver to a grocery store, so how much time it takes to park, how much time it takes to deliver. So those are parameters needed for the optimization.
Okay, the whole steps and every single steps that they take within the process.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. I'm happy I asked the question, because for me it wasn't obvious, and I thought it was taking a lot longer. Let's say, so it's super interesting. So you guys are the expert in that field. So we talk a lot about smart logistics and how it's going to look like in the future. What's your take on it? How do you think it's going to look like, and how do you think it's going to work in the, maybe not 10 years, because that's a long time, but maybe on the shorter term and midterm, what do you think it's going to happen?
What we see is like a trend. Also, some requests that we get from companies is so with the city delivery, they are doing last mile delivery, but they didn't change their networks so much. Still, they have a big warehouse outside the city. Lots of trucks are dispatched every day from those locations, but that's very hard to deliver. Like if you want to do 1 hour delivery or 2 hours delivery, it's hard because that was the world when they dispatch a truck in the morning and then that vehicle like visits multiple locations and in the evening comes back. So it doesn't work if you want to deliver within 1 hour. So they want to have open very small what they call micro depots. You can say like micro small depots like in the city.
Okay.
They call it pocket warehouse in Turkish. If you translate, they call it like.
So there is just like 50 or 100 square meter depots, very small, but like in Istanbul, just let's open 10 of those depots inside the city, just very small. So what they will do is from the distribution center outside the city, they will make those dispatch during the night so that in the morning all the orders will be in those small depots. And in the morning, they will be delivered both the shop deliveries and the customer deliveries from e-commerce.
So like the efficiency will be that we will not see those big trucks in the city during the day. So at night, they will like refill like the inventory in those small pocket warehouses. And during the day, even like motorcycles, bicycles, like more smaller, maybe they will be like electric vehicles. That's the trend. So the more environmentally friendly vehicles and then autonomous vehicles, obviously, are expected to do those deliveries. And one idea is like this pocket warehouses. The other is truck is like a moving warehouses. So for example, like more futuristically, like Amazon is, I think they filed a patent on like a Zeppelin with inventory flying about the city. If there's an order, like the drone.
Just ship it with the drone.
Yeah, the drone will fly up, get the inventory, and then it will bring it down to your home. So it will be like a moving inventory. So if there's like an event in a different part of the city, the Zeppelin will go there. So you'll be moving around, like this whole warehouse will be moving. So I think that's the.
But I think we will find some ways to reduce somehow that traffic and the load on everyone because it is just making all of us inefficient.
It will be like there will be a merge of like right now like inventory planning, like you plan your inventory, like demand forecast, and route optimization. So they are done separately. In the future, they will come together. So you will predict what might be ordered, and then you will fill your truck earlier so that you will already have the inventory when trucks are moving. So if there's an order, you will just direct the truck to the demand location. So that's another trend coming up. Moving inventory around the city.
And what's your main your main challenge as a company? You know, I guess of course growing and getting more of these clients that we were talking about. But what's the main thing that now you're trying to deal with?
We are trying to like automate as many things as possible because like optimization, if you don't have the right parameters, like if you cannot predict how much time you'll spend delivering a package, will it take 20 minutes or will it take 10 minutes? So if you run the optimization with 10 minutes in a pessimistic way, that results in like more resources than you may actually need. If you plan with 10 minutes, then that may not be feasible, realistic. So what our current focus is building solutions like using this sensors, like tracking data, collecting as many data as possible, and then predict this, learn these parameters as the vehicles move around the city. So then each day we can predict, okay, if this truck is going to this neighborhood at 3 p.m., the expected time that he will find parking is 5 minutes. But if it's weekend, it will be just 1 minute or not 0. So we are trying to get this data collection automated and more realistic because we see that's one of the biggest barriers of like adopting this kind of solutions. Companies are afraid that if we cannot provide you the right data, we may not get the right routes.
The right results, yeah.
So yeah, we are trying to do that on their behalf so that when we go to a client, we say, oh, data is not a problem. Maybe just for first week, it will be a problem. But at the end of the first week, we will know your business very well, like how your things are moving around. We will be getting predictive results and then we will be fine. And over time, it will get much better.
like we said at the beginning, you guys are now part of the, the finalists, the 5 finalists of Seedstars World. What's, let's say, 2-part question. What's next for you? And then what's next for you if you guys win?
What's next? What's going on? We don't know, actually, because of these virus issues.
Because of what's happening, I guess it's a bit of it. But let's say everything was, let's think positively and imagine that it's going to be fine.
Even in the negative cases, we believe that this logistics optimization will be important because we are cutting the costs. So our business model, we didn't mention that, but our business model is we, on average, show like 15-20% savings on their cost to our customers while meeting the demand on time, making those deliveries on time. So out of that 15%, we got some, but most of that remains in the customer. So we're just saving the cost. So we don't see any reason for logistics optimization to go down, although everything may go down. So we don't see a risk like that, but of course there may be some slowdown. So our focus, as Ozan mentioned, in terms of automating everything as much as possible so that we can really grow globally, so that we will not be asking any data to our customers, but we will be collecting that data from mobile apps or other sensors tracking softwares, and we will be learning on that. So as time passes, I assume that the customer uses our software for a month, but then something changed in their business. They shouldn't even need to tell that us, but we will just recognize that from what's happening on the field. So that is our vision, and that will be our next step. It will be win or not, I guess. But if we win Seedstars, of course, that will be very good, and I think we can just expedite our growth, because we want to invest in our sales team and marketing, because as we mentioned earlier in the talk, we're just doing sales, Ozan and me right now. So we know, and we learned a lot in the growth program how it should be done professionally. There are like many softwares and other things, and that is just a profession out there. So we want to hire sales and marketing and spend there.
Between you and me, do you think you'll win? I'm not going to interview any other finalists, so you're the only one I'm gonna be talking to. So I think you can say yes.
I see like the 50% chance. I give
50%. 50% is good.
I want to win.
Let's say 55. Let's say 55. Let's be optimistic, right?
I would say like 70 or something.
Ooh,
like 70. That. I'm more optimistic.
The reason I'm afraid is like the thing we do is like. Okay, it's good like for business and other things, but in Seedstars, like it's like an impact also is very important criteria. So I'm not sure if we stressed it that, I mean, we are telling you now that like optimizing logistics for the logistics company, actually it's beneficial for all of us. Like if you are moving into a new house, if your refrigerator doesn't arrive on that day, you cannot start your life in that house. If your furniture doesn't come on time, your computer, like people are now ordering monitors, like this virus, their home, start working from home. If it doesn't come on time, then it impacts everyone.
Not just on time, we will be seeing less trucks and traffic, so the traffic will decrease and it will affect all our lives and the planet. So
yeah, the
climate, everything, yeah, exactly.
The impact, maybe we should have stressed that more, I mean, as a feedback. We have actually had some good stories, but we forgot to tell those.
Well, then go ahead. I think we have all the time in the world, and I'm really interested, so let me know. Go ahead, tell me a good story.
One story was like this dispatcher, like the manual dispatcher of this ice cream company, because ice cream is sold in summer, and people want to take vacation in summer, but he couldn't because he had to be there. He's the planner. He knows. He had the 10 years of experience. He knows the streets. Like he is the expert of route planning. So what he told us was that like the last 4 years he couldn't take any vacation in summer. It's the first time that he was able to take a vacation with his family because like they had Optiyol to plan the routes on behalf of him. So that
I'm sure he deserved it after this long.
Yeah.
Go for Optiyol and take a vacation. I think you should do something. You should do an ad.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
That's really cool. Okay, I think it's a perfect story to wrap up. Guys, again, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on your Seedstars journey. Again, you're part of the 5 last startups. We're gonna get the results in a few in not long, actually, because that's gonna be pretty exciting. Wish you all the best in these crazy times. Stay safe and all the best. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to our hero's journey, and subscribe now for more stories on Seedstars podcast.